Today, we are going to talk in depth about some of the most evil people alive today. People like Bill Gates, the Clintons, and many other sadistic billionaires. These sickos want to control your life, your spending habits, your freedom, and they want to experiment on your body and your mind. No, this is not Alex Jones crazy stuff. This is really happening. And to help me expose the truth, I have Seamus Bruner with me, the author of Control Oligarchs. Seamus, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephen. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, as I went through your book, I realized, some of the biggest, most well-known billionaire names alive today, these people are involved in nefarious behavior, and most of it stems around trying to control our spending habits. But in order to do that, they want to control every aspect of our life, the way we speak, the food we eat, whether we enjoy meat, the medicine that we get injected into our bodies. So I want to go through this now. You're the director of research for the Government Accountability Institute. What is that?
That's right. So the Government Accountability Institute is a nonpartisan, nonprofit think tank. We kind of stay under the radar, led by famed investigator Peter Schweitzer. And so we follow the money. That's our motto around here. And typically we're following the money into the politicians' pockets, whether it be via their campaign contributions or special interests, lobbying money. In the case of the Clintons, they had this gigantic Clinton Foundation charity. And so I sort of cut my teeth on the Clinton investigation. What I do is sort of nerdy, boring stuff. I take the foundation's 990 IRS filings and I put it into a spreadsheet, and I sort and filter and try to figure out who's paying these politicians all this money and for what. And yeah, with the Clinton investigation, we found some pretty shocking stuff. But after that, I mean, we did a Jeb Bush investigation that was, back a number of years ago. Then we did the Bidens. We found the Ukraine money from Burisma. We first broke the stories on Biden China and the $1 billion private equity deal with the Bank of China. And that just led to, I mean, even today, there's news coming out confirming our reporting from over 5 years ago. I did a book on the FBI and the DOJ and the corruption there. That was a 2018 book called Compromised: How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. Found that James Comey got a $6 million payday from Lockheed Martin at the same time that Robert Mueller, then FBI director, was giving Lockheed Martin a $1 billion FBI contract. And so it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel if journalists would just follow the money. So for this investigation, the control oligarchs, as I call them, that would be the billionaires and bureaucrats plotting and scheming to dominate every aspect of your life. We followed the money all the way to the top. We followed it to Davos and to the pockets of Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, George Soros, and found, I mean, this was really, it started in the pandemic. We saw, what is Bill Gates, this, he's supposed to be a software guy and a big philanthropist. Why is he all of a sudden everywhere telling all of us how to live our lives, and that we can't get back to normal unless we do what he says? And so following the money showed that, I mean, everybody's kind of heard how the elites, the billionaire class, they added trillions of dollars to their personal net worth. Their companies exploded in value, companies like Meta, while everybody was locked down. Your kids were getting dumber while they got richer. And so that was sort of infuriating for a lot of people. But what really blew me away was not just that they were getting rich, because it's not a problem to make money. This is America. You can make money by making a product that people love to use. But what the real problem here is when they use their enormous amounts of wealth to control our lives. And so we found, just shocking example after example of the different industries that these guys are taking over or have taken over. I mean, the information control from companies like Google and Facebook, and the censorship and the propaganda and the mainstream media. So we could go on for a long time about all of this stuff. But yeah, it was a big undertaking. It took 2 years thousands and thousands of documents and obscure reports, a lot of stuff that's been scrubbed from the internet. And it's all put together in this book, which has got over 1,000 endnotes, really thousands of sources. So it's all the receipts are there.
Wow. Well, I can tell you why many journalists don't go after these people. Bill Gates gave the media divisions $300 million to ensure that nobody talks bad about him, that they don't talk bad about him, that they don't investigate him. They literally were, being defenders on his behalf because the money was so flippin' lucrative. So we're going to get into that a little bit, but my wife and I just spent the last 4 days with some of the smartest business owners in the country down in Phoenix. And one of the themes that emerged during the conference was how these evil people like Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, how they are trying to control us. And I was privileged to get to personally meet presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Because of connections I have and being in journalism. And he spoke openly for over an hour about the massive corporate capture that has happened and how our government and our lives are actually captured by these big organizations. But I want to talk about Bill Gates for a second. On the surface, this guy looks like a clean-cut nerd that made billions of dollars changing the way that we interact with each other digitally. And now he's just a good guy that wants to give back to the world. However, he's been part of damaging hundreds of thousands of people with vaccines around the world. Google covers this for him. He's made massive amounts of money off of COVID and then checked out just at the perfect time and let the American people eat all the losses. He's been buying up farmland all over the United States, telling us to not use fossil fuels while he flies in his private jet, to not eat meat, to be ready to eat bugs. What is going on with Bill Gates? As you research this guy, what's really going on with him?
Well, you're exactly right. He's used the oldest trick in the cutthroat monopolist's playbook, which is to rebrand yourself as a philanthropist. And all these guys do it. I mean, they use ruthless tactics, and the Rockefeller family was really the prototype. And I opened the book with the Rockefellers and the Standard Oil cartel that got into trouble with antitrust back. It sounds like ancient history, but it's important history because it shows exactly how Bill Gates has modeled his professional transformation. And so before 1995, Bill Gates did not give a dime to charity, or not according to his family, his father's memoirs. He said he was very, very stingy. His mother would implore him to be more charitable. You're the richest man in the world by the 90s. He's become the richest man in the world. His mother wanted him to give more money away to charity. He would not. And so I've read all of the family memoirs and also Microsoft employee memoirs. He was a ruthless, brutal guy to work for, forcing people to work around the clock to get the product launches out on time. And people on the left and right both saw him as such, as this kind of ruthless guy. And that's the type of person it usually takes to build a company like Microsoft. And I give him credit where due. There's some products that are very useful. As I typed the book on Microsoft Word, it's a great product. However, where he rebranded, it happened when the Justice Department starts looking into the practices of Microsoft. And they uncovered a strategy that Microsoft used called Embrace, Extend, Extinguish. It was alternately called Embrace, Extend, Exterminate, where Microsoft would enter into an industry, they would extend their reach within that industry, and they would act like, oh, we're not making any waves, we're just here to be a equal player, equal playing field. And then they would extinguish the competition or exterminate the competition. I mean, the words that Microsoft executives used was, we need to cut off the air supply, end quote, to our competitors. And so that is the kind of important history and the context surrounding Bill Gates's investments and his moves in every industry, from public health to the food and even now the information space. I mean, Microsoft is a big player in this artificial intelligence space, which the book gets into how dangerous that can be and will be, and it's happening right now. And so, yeah, the embrace, extend, extinguish strategy, I'd be happy to tell you how it works both in the food and the health and the information space.
Yeah, let's do that. If you could just briefly on each of those, that would be really helpful for my audience.
Sure. So, well, with Microsoft, it was the internet browsers industry that the DOJ prosecutor specifically identified. And so, Microsoft makes the Internet Explorer browser. We're just going to be a player in this industry. Then they extend the reach of Internet Explorer. They put it on every single PC. It's a mandatory piece of software that comes with all computers. You'll see that recurring theme about mandatory things, but. And then they extinguish the competitor. They cut off Netscape's air supply by pushing for regulations, by pushing for standard changes so that you wouldn't be able to play a video on the Netscape browser, but you could play it on Microsoft's Internet Explorer. Same thing in the agriculture industry. Everybody's sort of heard about how Bill Gates is buying up this farmland and they, just have a bad feeling about it, but what the heck is he up to? He's not just buying up the farmlands. Other people, you've heard about his investments in these fake meat alternative protein companies like Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods. But then he's got some more obscure investments into new synthetic fertilizer companies and genetically modified plant technologies and seed technologies. It's kind of weird to think about food as like a technology, but that's how Bill Gates views it. And patenting, by the way, is a big theme in the book about how a patent grants the patent holder a 20-year-long monopoly on various technologies. So seeds are now patented, protein chains, fake meats, they patent the proteins. And Bill Gates only invests in companies like Beyond Meats and Impossible Foods after they've received their patent approval, aka the monopoly granting them the patent. So that's the extending the reach. He buys up more farmland. He buys up more food companies. He invests in big, agricultural machinery companies like John Deere. Huge investments in John Deere, near $1 billion investment in that. That's huge. John Deere puts, by the way, software into their tractors now so that farmers can't really repair their own tractors. They have to get the software upgrade and a new license for their tractor. But that's the extending the reach. He's in every facet of the agriculture industry. And right now, we're now in the extinguish or exterminate phase, where he starts putting the farmers and the competition out of business. And how does he do that? He pushes for regulations, climate, under the guise of saving the planet, such an ambitious goal, such an ambitious guy, under the guise of saving the planet. All the other competitors need to go out of business. The farmers, who nobody knows more about sustainability and health, having a clean environment than farmers. They've been doing it for generations. They don't want to pollute their soils or ruin their environment. That would kill their business. Nonetheless, they can't use the fertilizers that have been working for generations. They can't use cows. Cows are next to be banned. I mean, the country of Ireland is preparing to slaughter tens of thousands of cows on Bill Gates's altar of climate change. So, we're in the extinguish phase now. Just go ask any farmer if their business is getting more profitable or less profitable. I mean, you already see family-owned farms, generationally owned, family-owned farms going out of business. It's a tragedy. And Robert F. Kennedy has been great on this. Junior has been great on this subject.
Yeah, it was really fascinating to listen to him. And I know, from research that Donald Trump extracted money from China and gave about $20 billion to American farmers. What most Americans don't realize is most farmers are on the brink of bankruptcy every year, on the brink, right? So then
that's correct.
Yeah, you have corporations like Monsanto who come in and they get a legal patent on their soybean and their corn, right? And they do that so that they can spread Roundup and different things, glyphosate on it. Excuse me. But then what happens is they allow that seed to float over into other farmers' property. Then they sue them and they say, if we find our patented tech on your land, then it becomes ours. And then they basically sue these on the verge of bankruptcy farmers into actual bankruptcy, and they're taking over all of these family farms. So all Bill Gates is doing is just following what Monsanto has been doing for the last 3 decades. It works. It's disgusting. It's wrong. But how much farmland does he have now?
He's got over 250,000 acres spread all over the country, and he invested in Monsanto. I mean, he had to divest after the climate change. People came after him and called him such a big hypocrite. But he partners with Monsanto to this day on various fertilizer projects. I mean, Monsanto now part of Bayer. He's got over 250,000 acres, pushing 270,000 acres, and those are just the acres we know about. I followed the money right to the investment trust, and he puts them in all these different trusts, like the Red River Trust, and they all have these very charming sounding names, but Cascade Investment. And so he's got a bunch of different LLCs and trusts that he uses to buy the land. And he's gotten pretty wise to the fact. North Dakota tried to block him from buying a farm. He succeeded. He owns the farm in North Dakota. But they tried to block him from buying a farm up there, a big one, saying that, you can't have these out-of-state big corporate interests buying up our state farmland. Now he, exerted a good amount of interest. Like the section on that is, there were some North Dakota officials affiliated with Microsoft, and then some money changed hands. But in any case, I mean, yeah, some of the farms he's got a potato farm in Washington State that you can see from outer space. It pulls, I believe, 14,000 metric tons of potatoes out of the ground every year. And these are all the potatoes that serve McDonald's with its French fries. I'm in Florida. He's got farms in Florida and Georgia, across the Southeast, Louisiana, Nebraska. He's got massive farms that grow virtually everything. And what he's doing is making them, it's the same strategy Microsoft used. He's putting them into this new standard called the Leading Harvest Standard. And it is, again, sounds charming, and it's all about sustainability, and you have to get Leading Harvest certified. All Bill Gates farms are certified, but really what farmers are finding is to become certified with this standard, it puts you out of business. And so it's crafty, it's clever, it's diabolical, and it's really not a good thing that's happening.
Yeah, it is very, very worrisome, especially because he's one of the biggest contributors to the World Economic Forum, which we'll talk about in a minute. He's also a huge contributor to the WHO, who tried to destroy us and control us during COVID. And he made close to $500 million off of COVID, pretending like he was a doctor who knew more than anybody. He and Fauci were colluding on things, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book talks a lot about that. But those are all on a real big macro level. On a micro level, as you've done research, what are your thoughts on their desire to control us through a CBDC, these central bank digital currencies, where over in China, you don't have a credit card anymore. It's your face. They track you. If you don't have the COVID shot, you can't buy bread. If you go outside of your neighborhood, your all your bank money gets confiscated. What are they going to do to try to control us right down to the money level?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so CBDCs, for those who haven't heard about them, central bank digital currencies. You think about, I mean, it's kind of esoteric stuff. And, the minute you start talking about Federal Reserve policy, a lot of people's eyes glaze over. But central bank digital currencies are a very important issue. There's huge momentum behind them. Our Federal Reserve is working on them. The Bank of International Settlements, which is like the central banker's central bank over in Switzerland, says that these are critical. They are tools for control. They specifically use that word control. And here's kind of how it works. You think about, well, isn't money already digital? I mean, I use my credit card. I use Apple Pay. I Zelle people. I thought money was digital. No, we have a currency that has cash, a cash-based system. And even though only about 3% of the money supply is in physical hard currency, that confounds the entire system, because cash is anonymous. And so they don't know. And this is what the Bank of International Settlements guy says. He says, we don't know who is spending $100 bill when you buy, whether you're buying groceries or gas or something else like ammunition or, maybe, donating to a political candidates or, it's not easy for them to totally surveil the entire system. CBDCs allow them to have total control, that's their words, over the financial system. That would be the total obliteration of privacy in your own life and in your own wallet. And so I'll give you an example. I mean, with central bank digital currencies combined with digital ID, which we can talk about that, but Bill Gates is huge into big digital ID. He's working with the United Nations. Just 2 weeks ago, they had an event called 50 in 5, and that's how they plan to roll out digital IDs in 50 countries within 5 years. So it's really just around the corner. But here's how it would work in practice. I mean, you saw it in the Canadian trucker protests. You had all these truckers who were protesting against the vaccine mandates and protesting against all the other COVID mandates. And so what did the Canadian government do? They froze their assets. No court orders, no warrants, just a state of emergency type situation. Now you see it happening right now over in Ireland with the Irish protesters. A lot of people have been talking about how the Irish government, and it's a control oligarch-backed government, pro-Davos, pro-World Economic Forum government, how they're trying to control speech. And that's a critical issue. I mean, being able to talk about this stuff, it's our only hope. So controlling the speech control is probably one of the biggest issues. But a lot of people are not hearing about how the Irish politicians want to control the finances. And basically, it's like a central bank digital currency. A lot of Europeans receive a form of welfare assistance or universal basic income type thing. The Irish lawmakers want to freeze the protesters' money. They want to freeze their UBI. And so we're going into winter here, and the government wants to freeze and starve protesters. So you saw it in Canada. You're seeing it talked about in Ireland. And if it comes to the United States, I mean, it's like game over. This is a de facto social credit score. Imagine if you're just using your constitutionally protected right to free speech, your First Amendment rights, and the government says, we're going to freeze your assets. Now, I mean, we saw kind of hints of this with the January 6th protesters. They used, the Bank of America kind of colluded with the government to reveal who from outside of Washington, D.C. was there at a protest. Sir, I'm not excusing any of the bad or violent behavior that took place there, but there were a lot of people there who were not violent, who were not breaking any laws. And for the banks to be working with the government to identify protesters, it's just un-American. And so it's happening even here in the United States in various forms. It's a big problem. And then the final thing when you add in with the digital ID and the CBDCs is artificial intelligence. Now, it sounds wonderful. You see these videos going around and you're like, wow, that is like magic. Maybe it's even helping you right now in your job, do better work. The problem is you are literally training your replacement. Right now, I mean, Sam Altman, who is the head of OpenAI, nobody knows AI better than he does, maybe other than Microsoft and Bill Gates, which backs OpenAI. That's the ChatGPT creator. He says that job losses are going to be significant. And what comes from, what the consolation prize is for losing your job to a robot or an algorithm, the consolation prize is universal basic income. It's not a coincidence that OpenAI is funding the largest study on universal basic income. That's basically welfare. And so what does Sam Altman say you're going to get as a form of universal basic income? He estimates all 250 million adults in the United States would qualify for $13,500. And so you might think to yourself, well, $13,500 ain't bad. I could live on that, per month. No, that's per year, $13,500 per year. And so these big tech control oligarchs, they don't want you to have the same standard of living. That's why, there's a lot of talk of 15-minute cities and the kill switch on the drive, the electric vehicles where they can remove your weekend driving privileges. This all sounds like science fiction. It all sounds like maybe conspiracy theory, but they openly talk about it. They brag about it even. So yeah, it's a daunting situation.
I feel like if you and I were presenting this as positive versus negative, my audience would be like, oh, wait a minute, am I listening into the World Economic Forum? Because this is
Right.
exactly what they're talking about, as if it's a positive thing. I remember watching a speech where they're like, listen, uh, freedom of speech is bad. We actually need to control people's speech. We need to control their social media, what they see. And then it turns out that they've been working with Google, especially with like climate change. When you Google, all of the stuff that they want you to see comes up. You and I think we're getting a natural organic search result. We're not. We're being fed exactly what they want us to see. And so you have people like Klaus Schwab, who sits at the head of this group and says things like, we're going to have to start eating bugs as humans in order to get people the protein they need. We can't have farmers. We can't have cows farting. The government needs to raise children, not parents. We need to digitally track every human being. We need to inject tags under their skin so we know where people are for their own safety. And then they say things like, you will own nothing and be happy. Like UBI, right? Like you'll have just enough to get by. But if you don't do exactly what we say, we'll shut off all of your privileges. So what is going on with the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab specifically?
Well, you're exactly right, Stephen. But how do you know that you won't like the maggot milkshakes? I mean, have you ever tried one?
I
How do
don't
you know?
want to.
How do you know you're not having one right now? They're putting it in kids' school lunches in the cafeterias. Now they won't say they're not going to market it as cricket powder. They'll market it as something like natural protein, all natural protein. But anyhow, yeah, the bugs thing, that was one of the things that I had to look into to see if it was real. The Washington Post just reported last month that the largest cricket farm or mealworm farm, insect-based protein farm, is going online this month. It will be able to produce 100,000 metric tons. I mean, you can't fathom how, think about a ton, think about 100,000 tons. You can't even fathom how much that is going online this month. They'll be rolling it out. It will slowly make its way into all the products you love, just like the Impossible Meats and the Beyond Burgers have. They'll end up on the menu. They won't market it as insect based, but that's what it will be. And so yeah, that's on its way. I mean, it's so nutritious and so good for the climate. How could you be against it? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But it's here, and we've got to say no to it. Other things at the World Economic Forum. I mean, you mentioned the looking under your skin. There's this visionary, your viewers, they're very savvy, I know that, have probably seen the videos floating around of Yuval Noah Harari. He's quoted extensively by Klaus Schwab. He's the author of Sapiens and other books that have sold tens of millions of copies worldwide. Barack Obama considers him a brilliant mind who is thinking the right way. Bill Gates has praised him. Mark Zuckerberg has praised him. This really shows the cronyism between academia and the World Economic Forum. I mean, education control, I mean, is yet another industry that they've got their tentacles in. Yuval Noah Harari said, quote, COVID is critical, or was critical. COVID is critical because this is what gets the people to accept total, this is the real verbatim quote, total biometric surveillance. And he says, but we need to go a step further, not just what's going on above your skin. We need to be monitoring what's going on underneath your skin. And all of that data, that can be sifted and collated and analyzed by Microsoft and determine, what your genetic defects might be and whether you're a worthy person to continue receiving health care. Seriously, Bill Gates has talked about the death panels before and how we're not going to be able to keep everyone alive. So it's a dystopian present. That's what one of the chapters is titled. We're in this dystopian present. Other things the World Economic Forum is talking very gleefully about. You touched on the you will own nothing and be happy. People, it's become a meme, but really they want to abolish private property rights. And they talk about it like it's some brilliant, beautiful thing where you don't have to own anything. You can just rent everything and a drone will deliver you tomorrow's outfit today. But do you really want to be a renter for the rest of your life? Do you want to own no property, own no vehicle, own nothing? I don't suspect you'll be very happy. You actually are starting to see the people who own nothing videos popping up. It's usually someone sitting in their car, live streaming to TikTok or something, talking about how they're not able to make ends meet. They can't pay their rent. The insurance costs have skyrocketed. They certainly can't even fathom buying a home. The groceries are expensive. This is all by design. This is all intentional. The weakening of national countries, because the number one goal of the control oligarchs is to transfer power away from people, away from individual countries, and into supranational institutions and organizations like the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and those are controlled by them. So they want to take the control from you and transfer it to themselves.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, pretty soon menus will have to say, instead of gluten-free, like cricket-free or maggot-free. Gives me the willies. You know, this reminds me, my mother-in-law is a therapist, and during her time of getting enough hours doing therapy, she worked at these like juvenile lockdown centers. And one of the first things they do in order to control you is they take everything, right down to your shoes. You own nothing. And then your happiness comes from them giving you access to your own stuff. Like, oh, we're going to let you use the bed. We're going to let you use your own shoes. You can now you've earned socks. You've been a good boy, right? You've been a good little girl. And this is what they want, is this, like, we'll control you by giving you access to the things that now, it's just our normal life. Like, we are heading for a dystopian future, as you say, and they pitch it in a way that they will make people think this is the right thing. Just like they did with COVID. They made a lot of people these Nazi neighbor watchers, where it's like, rat on your neighbor if they're having a party, rat on your neighbor if they have a funeral or a wedding. Eric Garcetti in LA was literally shutting people's water off if they had more than a couple people in their house. In New York, if you had a wedding, they literally shamed you. I mean, they were literally teaching people to not love your neighbor, but to shame your neighbor and to rat on your neighbor. It's just really gross, some of the tactics that were used on us in COVID, and yet people did it gleefully. I'm a Karen. I've got 3 masks on. Therefore, I get to control you because I'm doing what the government says. It's just really disgusting that we lived through that. Now, I want to talk for a second about your book, Control Oligarchs. I think it's a great title. It gets right to these oligarchs who control the government by having more control and money than the government. Our government is broke. They need these corporations. The corporations no longer need the government. And yet their main objective is to control our behavior, our spending habits, our movements, and our freedoms. So tell us a little bit more about this plot to control humanity through these billionaires and these corporations and these NGOs, these non-government organizations.
Sure. So, I mean, the World Economic Forum is a great example because its member organizations, just the top 25, have a market capitalization that is pushing $25 trillion. I mean, if you add in BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, who all manage assets of 10, 5, and 7 or so, respectively, you're up over $25 trillion in assets and just wealth by the top organizations of the World Economic Forum. Now, there are hundreds of other organizations that brings it even much higher than 25 trillion. That is higher than the GDP of the United States. It's higher than the GDP of China, the leading economies in the world. These guys have more economic power than every other country. And so where their will, that level of influence just cannot be overstated. And so you look at the World Economic Forum, what they're up to. And so when Klaus Schwab, he's really just kind of the front man. I mean, there are much more powerful interests behind Klaus Schwab, but he's sort of the ringleader, or the ringmaster, who gets out in front of the cameras and in the middle of the pandemic says, we need a great reset. And what does he mean by the great reset? He says, we're going to shut off the economies and then we're going to turn them back on, like it's a computer switch or something. You're talking about people's lives here. You're talking about people's like children's educations, children's well-being, everybody's well-being. I mean, a lot of suicides, depressions surged during this great reset. And now we're in the rebuilding phase, the build back better. And so what does Klaus Schwab say about this build back better phase? Well, we can't go back to the old normal. We've got to do a new normal. And he linked it to a greener economy. We need to be rebuilding a greener economy, a more inclusive system. I mean, they throw out these kind of buzzwords and it's like, oh, well, who's against, diversity or, inclusive? I mean, we're getting wise to what they mean by it. But, so what does COVID have to do with green? And he basically says that it's a blueprint. The pandemic is a blueprint for how we can build back in a greener way. And that means less travel. That means, you can't use as much power in your home. You can't have maybe gas stoves or gas powered vehicles. And it's really a pretext. When you hear people say it all the time, the pandemic is over, COVID's over. It's like, no, it was just a blueprint for the future for what they're working on now. And so here, I'll give you an example with the energy industry and how they're controlling this.
Okay.
So imagine it's now winter. You wake up in the middle of the night, you're freezing. I know you're in Southern California, so it's hard. So let's say the summer, it's the middle of a heat wave. You wake up in the middle of the night, you're sweating. You go to your thermostat and you try to crank down the AC. Now, I know you live in Gavin's Communist Republic of California, so this isn't hard to imagine, but you can't turn down your thermostat because it's been locked. You've lost control of the temperature in your home. This sounds like a conspiracy theory maybe to some, but ask the residents in Denver, Colorado, and in Texas. This has happened with these smart thermostats, which companies like Amazon and Google, they are making this technology possible. I think in California, you call them flex alerts. I don't think they're totally mandatory yet, but the blackouts really render you without power, the ability to control the temperature in your home. That's where we're headed. I mean, as people put more and more of these smart thermostats in their homes, they don't know that they're clicking I agree to be part of the sustainable thermostat initiative, which then locks you out of your home. So you can look up the stories. People have been locked out of their thermostats. They woke up in the middle of the night sweating. That's the type of control they want. They don't want you to be able to just drive across the country and see what beautiful landmarks we have all across our country. That makes you a big problem. You may not think that you've got many problems. I mean, more and more people are realizing they do. Bill Gates thinks you've got a lot of problems and he can fix them for you. And so this is the problem, these unelected billionaires, and because they're unelected, they are unaccountable. And that is a big problem, want to control our lives. And I think it's obvious. I mean, it may sound like conspiracy theories, but the more places you look, the more obvious it becomes.
Yeah, I feel like regular people like you and me, we're up against two systems that wish to annihilate us. We're up against the deep state, and we're up against the deep pockets state, where the people with deep pockets can really control and sway. Most people don't realize that the top 10% own almost 90% of the stock market. So when you are going against the stock market, you're actually only going up against a handful of organizations and people. So in your book, you go into more with George Soros, more with Mark Zuckerberg, more with these control tactics, climate change, things like that. If people want to get that, is it okay if I push them to Amazon to go pick up a copy of Controligarch?
It's on Amazon. I'd prefer to not give Jeff Bezos the money. So if you do get it from Amazon, just work on canceling that subscription as soon as you can. You can go to controligarchsbook.com. That's got other retailers. The best place to buy it is your local retailer. And that's one of the solutions talked about in the book. Okay. Is buy as many things at a local level as you can. Support your local farmers. I mean, it seems small, but it really makes a difference when everybody starts waking up to where you're spending your money. You really can't be funding the people who want to destroy you or control you. But sure, Amazon is there, and controligarchsbook.com has a bunch of other retailers.
Okay, I'll put both of those links down below. Seamus, thank you so much. We'll have to have you on to go even deeper. I know you got to get on to some other interviews, but thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.